My name's Derek Cobley, and together with my wife Felicity, we manage this meadow at Blaen Tir, which is about 3.5 miles outside Llandovery at about 600 feet. The field is surrounded by oak trees. It has been suggested that the oaks provide a microclimate which allows for the diverse nature of the flora that we get on this field. The field, which we've had for about 26 years now, is of unimproved grassland. As far as we know, there's been no fertiliser put on this ground for the last around 40 years. I'm afraid the field isn't looking its best at the moment. It was cut at the beginning of September, about 2 weeks ago. It was cut by the local farmer who takes off the grass. He only does it after the middle of August, and he's done that every year for us. How did we begin? When we bought the cottage, as I say, about 26 years ago, it came with a field, but we didn't really think about the field until we moved in and looked at this field. And then several farmers came and said, oh, could they have it for sheep, or could they put horses on it? And we had the idea to make it a wildflower meadow. Felicity had always loved wildflowers, and she'd learnt their names from her father. So we looked around. We asked people, we read a few books and assumed that we'd have to do quite a lot of work, until someone suggested that before we did anything, we talk to the recorder for Carmarthenshire for flowers, Richard Price, who, a lovely man, appeared one afternoon, did a survey of the field, and he told us basically do nothing with it. Just leave it and look at it and see what happens. And since then, that's really what we've done. But we talked to the farmer, as I said, and we arranged that once a year he would cut it. Quite late, but he agreed, although I'm pretty sure he thought we were mad. And we then just left the field to see what would happen. So we feel a bit like frauds talking about our field, because it hasn't been a huge effort. All we've had to do is not interfere. So for a few years we followed Richard's advice. Richard had been more interested and excited by some sedges he'd found, but we certainly were most excited when the orchids started to appear all over the bottom half of the field until they formed a pink carpet in the end of May, beginning of June. There must have been well over 2,000 of them by the end, and then gradually more and more flowers came, more and more varieties, until in 2002 we found the first greater butterfly orchids. It was just 3 spikes the first year. The next year there were 7, it went to 14, then 24, then 60, 170, and by the year 2012 there were over 300, and we'd given up counting. We wrote to Richard to tell him, and as a result of his visit to see the orchids, he brought a group of members from the British Botanical Society. They found, over their day exploring our field and the surroundings, well over 130 different species of plant. The other plant that had appeared around that time was Dyer's greenweed, which is another plant that is becoming rarer. You asked me to talk about any difficulties we've found over the years. Well, for the first 10 years, the field just blossomed and we just enjoyed it. But then, gradually, we did notice some jobs that needed to be done. We began to notice that there was about a 10-metre strip running right round the edges of the field where it was very few flowers and a lot of very tall grass. This was because the low branches on the oak trees meant that the tractor never cut it each year. Also, this was the area where all the leaves from the oak dropped in the autumn. Rich leaf mould, uncut grass, meant fewer flowers, and tall rank grass, shading out the few flowers that did try and grow there. So we got Ivy Dunham from Conservation and Trees to come and take a look. And she came, and as the locals say, She and her husband Carl brought light into the field, which really meant that they cut the lower branches of the trees so that the tractor could get underneath. It has made a huge difference. The farmer gained a few extra bales of hay, and we can get to clear the brambles, bracken that were beginning to develop in those areas around the edges. 2017, I think, the late summer, early autumn was incredibly wet in Wales. For the first time ever, the farmer couldn't cut the field. The next summer, the difference was amazing. The flowers just weren't there. And the effect, if I'm honest, of that 1 year missed is still visible even today. Of course, this might be because of all the strange weather we've been having ever since. Heat waves, storms, torrential rain. Other meadow growers have had the same problems, and I know that because I'm a member of the Carmarthenshire Meadows group. It didn't even exist when we started our meadow, but it's been great because you can compare notes with others, find out their solutions, and generally it would have made our lives so much easier when we had that mad idea 26 years ago. So there we are, 26 years, and the meadow is still flowering and still there to be enjoyed.